My name is Jordan, I'm your chair. Panel with me, we have Alexander, James, and Kate. Kate? You're James. I'm sorry. Sorry. It's my American slur. I just forgot to speak English. So, speeches will continue to be 7 minutes as they were throughout the rest of the tournament. Do you get time? Time around? You will hear a bang at 1 minute, a bang at 6 minutes, and 2 bangs at 7 minutes. From 7 minutes and 15 seconds, there will be continuous banging. We will put our pens down, and we will not listen to anything else you say, so it is not advisable to speak after 7 minutes and 15 seconds. If there are no questions, panel ready, it gives me great pleasure to call the House to order. Oh, as possible, they would like to film this round, I've been told. So if everyone could take a moment to consider if you're okay with that, and if anyone is not okay with being filmed, if you could inform me so we can ensure that we wouldn't film it. But is everyone okay with this being filmed? Okay?
I wouldn't be, it's okay to film, but not upload it at YouTube afterwards. So
what exactly is being done with the video?
It's been uploaded, but we'll put a ban on your face.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so make sure you make a note of that. Just make sure that's noted down.
Yeah.
Okay, it's good.
Can we have the same thing that he said?
Okay, for both speakers?
Yes.
We'll decide after the debate.
That's reasonable. Okay, think about it during the debate, and we'll do it then. Until then, if you can make sure you speak up at the table so that there's a microphone and you can be recorded.
Thanks.
All right, with that out of the way, it gives me great pleasure to call upon the Prime Minister. Here we go.
Thank you for the floor, Mr. Speaker. What we're talking about today is making police match their ethnic composition of their arrests that they make to the ethnic composition of their jurisdiction. What I will be talking to you about today is what we're actually going to do, so how that's going to work, why it is necessary, how doing this will actually solve the problems, and why it's important to do this at the police level and not at the court level later on. So, what is our plan? If after a year we find out that during that year the ethnic proportions with regards to arrests do not match those of the ethnic proportions in the jurisdiction on a statistical significant level, and the jurisdiction level is municipality, then we will send internal affairs to them and look at why this happened, right? What we are likely to expect to happen is that there is a statistically significant amount of minority people being arrested, in which case we will send IA, but if it is the opposite direction, of course we will also go and investigate, because it is rather, it is not really normal that difference either way, right? So, no thank you. So, why will we send IA to investigate? Well, we think that probably something is weird going on if this happens on a statistically significant level, right? And we think that doesn't necessarily mean that discrimination is going on. It might have to do with the communities themselves, etc. But it is important that we go and have a closer look. Therefore, we sent our task force, which we have already dedicated to this, which is internal affairs in most countries, to go and look at what the police is actually doing. And if we find irregularities, we will maybe punish the agents who are showing extremely racist behavior. We might discipline the chiefs if this happens on a larger scale within his territorium, and also we might even overturn specific arrests or make public amends in the case that we feel that this has been unjustly so, and we feel that this extreme wrongs have been done. So that is our plan. Yes, go.
Will this approach be secret to police and public, or it will be public?
This will be public. It's meant to be a measure of accountability. We think that having the public aware of this situation is a very good thing, and therefore we actually want to increase this transparency, and therefore it will be public, right? So why is this necessary? What we see right now that in all levels of law, sorry, can you be quiet? So that on all levels of law enforcement, we see certain types of discrimination. We see the guy who at check-in at the airport is the one person who gets picked out of the line and be checked, right? And he's probably someone from a minority rather than from a majority, even if that is statistically unlikely, right? We see the black guy who was shot in the neighborhood in America lately. without proper evidence for them to be having to shoot him in that case. We say that this can be in both extreme measures, and it can really attack the security that minorities feel within our society. And how does this happen? Well, we think that some people are more likely to be identified as a suspect person, exhibiting suspect behavior because they belong to a minority, right? So we, for instance, see that in cases of in criminal cases, witnesses are more often to say that it was a black guy who did it, even if evidence shows us that it was actually a white guy. So we say that this is basically something that happens in the back of the mind of people. They are more likely to report to the police activities demonstrated by a minority person rather than by an actual person. So what happens then is that the police is more likely to come and investigate that person. This is having the same type of things in the back of their mind. They are more likely to find that person also suspect, simply because of the way that they have been informed by the media, for instance. And so they are more likely to search thoroughly, they're more likely to really look at them, and more likely to arrest them even if evidence is not really all that clear. And due to this more intense scrutiny of their behavior, they're also more likely to actually find evidence of foul play, right? Because they're simply being more interrogated, more looked upon. And the opposite is, of course, happening for majority members. Majority members are not due to the same scrutiny as minorities, and we think that that is also bad, right? So having this process, they are also more likely to get convicted. That is why often minorities have disproportionate rates in prisons within almost all countries. And we say that that is very wrong and very sad for them, because we think that conviction is probably something that we should do on equal footing, and everybody should be innocent in the eyes of the law. And so having been arrested more often, having been convicted more often, media is also more likely to report this type of behavior in their news, because it simply occurs more often, and therefore the public gets this image of specific minorities being especially harmful to society, especially wrongful, which then increases discrimination, which makes them then more likely to once again identify the black guy as being the one who did the deed, even if it was a white guy in reality, right? So this is also leads to more feeling of disenfranchisement for more minorities, and this is all very bad. Go.
Normally people who sit after that in jail have been in the court and were proven to be guilty, and most of those people, like you said, are black, so they are guilty, and therefore it's okay to arrest more black than white because most of them were guilty.
Yeah, but the problem is that more whites are probably also guilty, but they're not being scrutinized as much, so therefore they're less likely to be found guilty. We think that that's very bad. So how do we solve the problem? We will give police force more incentive to actually look at themselves and at who they search and who they arrest, right? So we imagine that still more reports will be handed on for minorities, because the public is not under scrutiny, but at least police, they have this self-reflective incentive to reflect on their own behavior and see if they are being discriminated or not. And therefore, even if they were likely to investigate a specific minority crime, they're also less likely to arrest them specifically based on their minority, and we think that this is a good way to counter the discrimination in the back of their heads, right? So why do we do this at police level and not at court level? Because first of all, it would also be nice to have in courts more scrutiny on whether courts convict rightly the minorities, right? And we think that we could also have this. But we think that it is more important to do it at police level, because the feeling of being searched unjustly is very damaging, and because these arrests get often reported in the media without the due process that the first opposition is going to be talking about now. So thank you very much.
I would like to thank you, friends. Let's remind everyone this is a slightly echoey room, so if you need to talk to your partner, please do so quietly so we can hear the debate that's going on. With that in mind, I would like to call the leader of the opposition. Here.
Shall I start? Okay. Mr. Speaker, we have a problem with people being too much politically correct. We believe that if you look at statistics, you will notice that who does more crimes are usually minorities, are usually people who are black, Mexican, people who are being teased within our society. And we believe that the right thing is to put our power, our police power, in those places and not try to be politically correct and try to do supposedly the right thing. Therefore, I will talk about two things in my speech. Firstly, I will explain to you why we will talk about why what will happen will be unjust arrest, and secondly, how it will harm the efficiency of the police. First, I have a little bit rebuttal. Okay, so the previous speaker came and told us that what we do is we hurt the security feeling of the minorities because they are being more, because the police come more to them and search more at their places. Now, Mr. Speaker, look, we believe that because statistically there are more crime inside those places where are more minorities, we believe that what happens is that minorities are afraid, like if I'm innocent people and I'm from minority, I'm afraid more of people from my neighborhood. I'm afraid more, no thank you. I'm afraid more of the criminals inside my neighborhood more than I'm afraid of the police, because I know that if I'm innocent, I have nothing to be afraid of being arrested because I'm more afraid of the guy hanging around with a gun who can actually harm me much more than the police. Therefore, we believe that if you want to help the innocent people from minorities, you should put your effort to where there is more crime, and this is important. Okay, other rebuttal will be within my speech. Let's start with my first point about unjust arrest. So I started my speech and talked to you about politically correct. So my first point will explain to you why there is no linear connection between crime and your ethnic group you came from. Because you see, society discriminates people. Society discriminates minorities, meaning the life of minorities is harder than the life of an average white male person. Meaning they feel much more frustrated, they feel much more hunted, much more, they feel a dead end, and I'm glad they agree with me, because these are exactly the situations that leads a person to do more crime. Meaning, no thank you, that if I came from this place, if I came from minority, I tend to do more crimes. Now, if people notice, and this is important, that this is something biased, that even today, when we see black people like Barack Obama, he's the president, people are still biased against black people because it's something historical. It is an historical bias. Meaning if now we will start arresting people with regard to their amount in society, it will not change the bias because people still think that they are different. People still tend to believe they do more crimes because they're black, because this is what they do today. So the bias won't change, but the crimes will still be there. Meaning what you will do is that you just won't arrest people who do more crimes. No, thank you. Okay, so what will happen is that we believe that two scenarios are possible. Well, first scenario that's possible is that people will just not arrest enough criminals. We'll say there are more black criminals, no thank you, than the amount of black people within society, then the police might not arrest people who deserve to be arrested, meaning those people will still be free and will still be able to make crimes. But the other scenario, Mr. Speaker, that is possible, that the policemen will arrest all the criminals that they arrest today, but then they still have the other people, the other, say, white, non-minority people, they need to arrest, meaning they have to, no thank you, do unnecessary arrest. And why is it so bad? Why don't we want people to be arrested without a great need for them to be arrested? Because when you arrest a person, that he's clearly, you're just looking for him, you're just searching for him, and you're not certain in 100% that he has done the crime, then you harm him in the long term. You harm him because now it will be harder for him to get a job. No, thank you. It will be harder for him because people will look at him. I'll take you after the point. Will look at him different. People talk about him. And basically people suspect that you are a criminal. And this is bad. I'll take second. Yes.
But doesn't that mean that just the minority gets scrutinized because of the majority laws, because they are not affected by that, because they have not so many criminals, and that's why the life for the minorities is much harder, making that much more likely to be more criminal?
Okay, thank you. We believe that, yes, they're likely to be more criminal, but what we are obliged to do here is not arrest less criminals. What we are obliged to do here is maybe give them more money, give them better education, help them in their lives, not arrest less of them and let them get free with this, or on the other hand, arrest innocent people that hasn't done anything just because you need to fill those places, just because you need to give another white person to the court. So we believe that this is just making an unjust arrests. Okay, so how it will harm the efficiency of the police? Now, we know that the police has limited resources, it has limited time, it has limited amount of people it can arrest. So, if it will not do this by the ethnic, if they will do this by the ethnic way people look like, then they will first think more about like who they arrest and not do the arresting, because now if I arrest another black person, I need to arrest another 3 white people, and I will think twice and I will not do what is necessary. And we believe that this is bad because if the police doesn't work efficiently, then then the security of the society damaged and more people within the society being damaged. So, Mr. Speaker, because we showed you that first, the security of society will be worse. Secondly, that it will bring to unjust arrest or not enough arrests and not bring justice to the people who did crimes, we beg you to oppose. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the Leader of the Opposition. And we'll now call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Here.
Thank you for the floor, Mr. Speaker. The Western society is a racist society. We see this happening in your jurisdiction every day, where we see that people that come from minority groups, for example, black people or Muslim people, as we see in the US, as we also see in Europe, is that people from minority groups do get arrested more and more. We say even if it might be true that people that come from these minority groups do commit more crimes in general, right? We see that there's actually a vicious circle going on, and we say that that's very unfair, right? So why is this true, actually? So we see that those people do commit more crimes, basically for all the reasons that opening opposition basically gives to us. Because we see that the police officers are biased in the sense that they do check those people more. They do have a regular check on people that come from out of order, that do come from minority groups, right? We say that that's, as I'm going to talk about in my speech, it's going to lead to like a feeling of unfairness, right? That leads to discrimination, not just because those people get more arrested, but also because when they finally end up in court and when people do get sentenced, usually you see that those people from minority groups do get higher sentences in general than people that come from minority groups, even if they committed the same crime. So first of all, we say that the chances of being caught as a minority group is much greater than when you're from a majority group. And secondly, like you will get like more sentence. So we say that's very fair. And then you create this vicious circle that the opening opposition basically actually described, right? Which is basically very helpful for the case of the proposition, right? So they say that like statistically there are more crimes, like in terms of minority groups, like they do statistically commit more crimes. We say that this might be true, but that is where the exact danger comes from, because what we see is that those people are now disenfranchised from society. So we do think that we should, like we have this moral responsibility to break this vicious circle and actually just try and do research in terms of like investigation and arrestments in terms of what those people have actually done rather than where people come from. We think that's going to lead to a more fair society. So we do say in that sense
sense that we should be more politically correct, and we should do the investigations for the reason that Cezanne gave you. Like, it might not necessarily be true that people from minority groups do commit more crimes. It might be true, but then again, we see that those people are proportionally much more arrested, and we think that that's very unfair. So I would like to thank the opening opposition for all the analysis they gave. No, thank you. So my arguments, I will have two arguments. First of all, I'm going to explain how this will lead to a feeling of fairness for the majority groups as well as the majority groups, and then I'm going to talk about how this will lead to less crime in terms of minority groups. Rebuttal will mostly be interwoven, but I do have one small point, because what the previous speaker, the leader of opposition, was telling us, and like at the end of her speech, was that there are different means of helping these minority groups to get rid of this vicious circle. Just for example, by giving money or by providing education. But what we actually say as opening government is that the point of discrimination starts when you are badly treated in a jurisdictional system, rather than, for example, when you have less money or when you do not have enough access to education, right? At the point where you see that legally you are treated differently than like practically in the education system, we feel that's actually much more harmful to us. We say that the jurisdictional system is a more important form of public discourse to be treated equally, rather than like things such as education and stuff like that, because we're talking about the public sphere and we want people to be treated equally. That's like the whole point of the jurisdictional system, that people are treated based on what they do instead of who they are. So we say that this is where the harms come from. So on to my arguments. Anyone POI?
Can you please explain to me how exactly are you going to change this bias? Why you believe that this move will create this fairness?
Okay, so that's basically what I'm going to talk about in my arguments. I'm going to explain why the bias will change. I'm going to talk about how people will be less disenfranchised in society, so why people from minority groups will commit less crimes, and how people from majority groups actually see this change, right? So for first argument, how will this lead to a feeling of fairness for the minorities and for the majorities? We see in the status quo that the discrimination in terms of like on the jurisdictional level does have a big effect on minority groups, regardless whether they commit more crimes or not. They do have feelings of discrimination in the status quo because they're checked more upon, as I already explained. We say that it's very harmful in terms of social cohesion, right? They do not really see the point of actually improving themselves if they know like that they are discriminated, even though like if you're, for example, a black person and you see your family being discriminated, that does affect people that do not commit crimes as well, right? We say that it's very unfair. You do not really have an incentive to identify with society and actually feel this moral obligation to actually do better because you're already discriminated, and then you end up in this vicious circle. So, like, in terms of minorities, what will happen? So, there is, as I said, there is a feeling in the status quo that those people are treated unfairly because they're based on their ethnicity instead of their actions. So what we think this policy will actually create, right, is that people know that they're treated more fairly, because people will have a better feeling, like more feeling that they're treated for their actions instead of their ethnicity, which we believe is a very good thing. So they will have more feeling of fairness, right, for those reasons. And also for the majority groups, because we do think that it will also lead to a better feeling of fairness for them as well, right? Because we think that even though the media, as Cezanne explained, does report a lot on for example, the crimes that have been committed by minority groups, you see an awareness raising also in majority groups that the discrimination does actually happen, right? So that's also where very recently the media reports on it, like what you see mostly happening in the US. So they also are aware of the fact that people from minority groups are treated unfairly, right? And we think that this policy will lead to more acceptance towards minority groups. That will become clearer in my second argument. And even if we say that people from majority groups, like in the short term, feel that this is treated unfair because they feel like, oh, but people from minority groups do commit more crimes and this is a very unfair system, we see that in the long run, this will actually lead to the better, right? Because, as I'm going to talk about my second argument right now, this is going to lead to less crime in terms of minority groups, and that will lead to more social cohesion, right? Because where does crime come from? And this is a very important clash with the opening opposition, right? As I explained, those people from minority groups have a feeling of fairness in the status quo. And this leads to an inability for those minority groups to identify with the majority group because they feel discriminated. Therefore, we say that feel less empathy to the moral obligations in the juridical system, right? And they have less of a moral obligation to actually hold to the rules that are stated in the jurisdiction, right? Because now they don't feel like
it doesn't happen, so why should I just hold on to those rules, right? And it's a vicious circle, as I expect. It doesn't matter anymore. So what this policy does is that it creates more fairness, and that the factors which I have explained, the moral obligation to actually hold on to those rules of the jurisdiction actually will change. One is minority groups will be aware that they are treated more fairly, right? So they will have more of a moral obligation, actually. They can identify more with the society because they feel that they're treated fairly. Therefore, they will less of an incentive to commit crimes because they know that they're treated fairly. They have the feeling that they can actually, because they're treated fairly, they can make something out of their lives. They will behave better, therefore, and the bias will therefore disappear on the long run. For those reasons, I beg you to propose.
I would like to thank the Deputy Prime Minister. And okay, now call upon the Deputy Leader of the Opposition.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, I start. Mr. Speakers, ladies and gentlemen, we believe in this debate. In order to win this debate, there are two main things that the government need to prove us. First of all, they need to prove us that this is going really to turn down the discrimination feeling of those minorities and to make them feel better and to be better. I don't think they did this, and I'm going to prove to you what actually they're doing is totally the opposite, which is going to be my first point, exactly with the clash with the government. And the second thing that they need to prove us, that after their point, after what they say, we will going to have a better street, we're going to have less crimes. My partner explained to you why, if there are more crimes in minorities, yes, we will think that this is fair to have more and more, to arrest more and more black people, because the point of the police is not the judge, it's not the court, like I raised in my first POI. It's not to be the court and to say whether the person is just or not, it's to clean as many suspects as they can in order, first of all, and the immediate moment, to clean the streets from the maybe crime, and on the second one, to be sure that one of the suspects, as much as they can, is a criminal, and I had it. So, I'm going to have 2 points. First point, I'm going to explain to you why all what they were telling us about why this bias is going to change is not true, and in fact this bias is going to grow even stronger and not going to change. Second thing I'm going to talk with you about is about how exactly I'm getting better with those people. So let's, most of my rebuttal will be in the point, and we're just going to clash with them. So what did we hear mainly from them? They come and told us, thanked really much to my partner, explaining why they are starting really bad, why it's so, they feel unfair, they feel like they're treated differently, and now what's going to happen, their solution, like the comment shows, that now they will have the feeling of empathy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is not true. What they have right now in the status quo is this feeling of empathy from the majority. And why is that? Because today, if I am a black person and I was arrested, and after it I was freed because I was innocent, when I come back to my job, when I come back to my white friends and to my society, and they told me, hey, what happened? What I say to them is, oh, well, they arrested me because I'm black. You know, they arrest black people. And then the majority is having sympathy. This is the sympathy that we have today because everybody knows that in some way there is more crimes with black people, but also there is discrimination. So when a black person is being arrested, I'm not automatically thinking that he is guilty, and when he's being, if this is the person that I knew before, if this is the person who was from my circle, and I have known him, then I will say, oh, well, he arrested because he's black, this is fine. What will happen tomorrow? What's going to happen if this law, I will take you in a moment, will pass? We believe that it's not going to make this sympathy grow and the bias go down. We believe totally opposite will happen. Because now I cannot say I was arrested because I am black. Because now they arrest people who are matching some ethnic bias. In other words, that you make this discriminated bias, you make it as irrational bias. Because now, when a person is being arrested, it's not because he was part of a group calling ethnic groups like black people or Asian people or something like that people. He was arrested because this specific individual was suspected in a crime. And it's not because you are black. It's because you are a suspect and you was there. So now this joke and this sympathy is not going to work as much as it worked until today. And we believe this is going to hurt way more those minority individuals who are going to be arrested. Why? Because now they cannot use it. So if I have a person who I was working with and he was my boss and now I'm getting arrested, it's not because, oh well, I'm black, oh well, you know, wrong place, wrong person. No, this is because you are a suspect. Because now what the police is doing, they're doing this match. I'll take you in a moment, you may see it, I will tell you when to get it. No, because you understand, now when people see somebody being arrested, it's because they know that he matched something the police told, he matched what the police is a suspect, and not just because the police is trying to make sure that all the black people who were there are doing this. What we have now, that people are going to look at him even more differently. He will be looking even more suspect than he was before, because now he is an individually was arrested because he is a definite suspect and not because he's black or because he is from this discriminated group. And we believe this will increase the bias between, you may see that with exactly the amount, not because he is part of some kind of ethnic group, but because this bias will get more rational. Now I have a real reason to believe that this individual is bad, and therefore we believe this is going to harm minorities, individuals, and harm people from minorities even more, and therefore to decrease their chance. Second, please.
But isn't it that we have prejudices which then lead to racial profiling, which then lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning to say we find more guilty blacks?
What we're saying, that first of all, we're coming to a time that the guilty blacks we find today in the status quo and tomorrow after this disaster are going to be probably the same. What the people we're talking about are going to be hard even more as just extra people who afterwards will be free and are being taken now. Because those innocent, because we believe that first of all, not all the criminals may be caught, like my partner said, that some of those criminals may not be caught, and therefore we believe this is bad. And second thing that we'll say, that now the innocent people who will be caught will be biased against them, because if they will be caught, they are definitely suspects, and they definitely have something to do with the crime. So even if they're freed, people will be more biased against them, and this is going to harm, way more to individual minorities, and we believe this is really, really bad, and we shouldn't do that. I move to my second point. So they come and tell, yeah, that this feeling of empathy is going to make them better, going to put down crime and people will have better. We believe no. The fact that we have more ethnic people criming, like my partner said and explained to you, this is clear. And the second one, because we have all this debate about that, we believe it increases the debate to talk about the issues of these people. The fact that there are more criming, the fact that there are more put in jail, the fact that there are more innocent black people taken to the police, it increased our debate over the issues they have, over the ghettos, over the problems the society are dealing. And in order for that, we want those things to continue. Now, if my first point is going to happen and the bias is going to grow, then we believe it's not going to help to talking about the issue of the whole society of black people or the whole society of Asian people, because now those problems are not going to be like, oh well, there is a problems of crime and things in ethnical issues, so we need to talk about their education, about how to promote them and make them better. But we're going to have now, there are specific people who are individual, and it's not about their issue, because now we're not arresting all of them. And we believe it will not increase, it will not be better with the minorities, it will not be better with the discrimination, and will not be better with the clean streets. Therefore, please stay with the status quo.
I would like to thank the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, and now call upon the Member of the Government here.
Plato once wrote in his famous book, The State, that that justice is the beauty of the polis. And then he wrote a second thing, where he said, justice is a complex issue. And that's exactly the case what we are talking here. Is it in a situation where in the USA 12.6% of the people are black, but 80 to 90%, that varies a bit, of the people who are arrested are black, then we think this shall not be to some, let's call, genetically criminality within the black ones, but because of structural errors and because of stereotypes we have within society, and that's why we have to fight against them. First of all, I want to come to the rebuttal, and then I want to talk about the racial profiling, why this leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy. Then I want to talk about how we establish a virtuous circle, where we get to a more harmonious society. And then I want to talk about policemen and judges, why we just have to affect those people. There was a very interesting contradiction between first because first it was said that blacks are disadvantaged within society, and then it was said that, okay, they got higher crimes, but maybe the disadvantages are the reason for the crimes, because they feel frustrated, they feel outraged, and therefore it's quite hard that there are also structural reasons, not only individual reasons, that lead to their crimes. Then you said, okay, there's a lack of empathy that we have, and we see that there's a lack of empathy if there's a black person, because you've got these prejudices concerning that person. And for example, cocaine is a white drug, but crack is announced to be a black drug. Then you see some people just having the crack, but it's totally legitimate, for example, for white people, or it is accepted to smoke cocaine, so therefore you have this in-group bias which leads to this lack of empathy. And then you are asking, okay, how does it come that we just get these biases or these prejudices? You read in the media the story of one more black person that has committed a crime. You can see the crime statistics, and for example the policemen, when they get into reaction, they see more often and more often, because they do their racial profile, the black person. And therefore they get the experience, oh, it's a black, therefore it's more certain that he's the person there. And that is exactly the thing which is here. And why do we think, what do we want to do? Because the minority says racial profiling is unjust. So we say, okay, anyone will be caused by the same thing. Anyone then is affected by racial profiling. Because if people do not like to have this, they want to abolish it and say, okay, we want to have anyone treated equally. That's exactly the case. Okay, to the first point. What is the thing in here? We have a situation where for example, black people are more often controlled. When you control a person more often, then it's more likely that you just find something, because many persons just have some things to do. Like, for example, black people are often controlled because of drugs. They are not that likely controlled like white people. Meaning to say, it is not necessarily the crime that they've really done, but the detected crime that is given there, and therefore this leads to an unequal treatment, because it's not necessarily the crime that they did. And they just meet some judges, like who might also have some prejudices, which then just treat them even harder, because they think, okay, they are really the ones arrested. So this leads to less freedom, as we can see, because 90% of the people are black there. So we think that racial profiling leads to a self-fulfilling prophecy, which we think is wrong. And if we compare this, what do we have within society? At the beginning, there are the disadvantages about jobs, about career, about the situation, which leads to frustration of the minority, which then leads to aggression. And all these things that are done there are higher detected because you've got this racial profiling. This then leads to the point that more people are arrested, which then leads to hatred within the minority and leads to reactions. And these things just then lead to more stereotypes within the majority, and these stereotypes then again compete to the disadvantages we have. That's the vicious circle we have. What do we want to have instead? We want that white people, or that the majority is controlled more often. What does that lead to? That leads to the point that there are also more white crimes are found. So therefore, it's not the case that just one person is overpopulated there, but all the people are affected. Meaning to say the whole society and anyone in the society is treated in the same way, and therefore they're just concerned about what's going to be there. And for example, the policemen see, oh, it's not only the blacks, but it's also the white people who just commit some crimes. And then we will have media reports, for example, of white people who just also commit their crimes. We'll see that the statistics differences will decrease, what then in effect leads to less stereotypes, which we think is quite important. I take you.
If you're saying about media, what stops you from making the same statistic for black and white people now? You don't need to change the system of police, which will bring more risk in order to present information correctly.
I think that the point is when we would fake statistics, because statistics should be about all the people included there. We don't think that this is a good idea. What is the problem here? If we think about policemen, ordinary policemen or judges, they are often white middle-class people. You just got an underrepresentation of minorities within the state. What do these people have if they should not have? But they've got some kind of subjectivity, and this subjectivity is this in-group bias, meaning to say that I prefer my own group cognitively instead of the other group. This then leads to the point that, for example, they think it's just to control these other people more, and then they get some experiences that then just reaffirm their behavior. And what we think is if these people just get some different experiences, like for example they control people about taxes, about drugs and so, then they think, okay, it's not only the black ones, but it's also the white people who just commit these crimes, which then will change their mindset, because they think, okay, it's not only this minority, and this is very important, because what the executive, police and judge have to do is an equal treatment, because the equal treatment is one of the main principles of justice where the state becomes legitimate, and that's exactly the case. And one last thing, which we think is quite important, although it's a bit sophisticated, we must admit it. It's about the individualization of guilt. What do we have here? We have a society which you said that, for example, black people are less likely to get the good jobs, or that they are not that likely to get the good colleges. Then this directly leads to a point where their situation is not that well, meaning to say they that feel outraged, they feel frustrated. In this situation, it is more certain that they become angry and that they can't just avoid to the rules, which then leads to a point that some of them, not because of their own personality, but because of the structural form of society, become aggressive or commit some crimes. Meaning to say, they will be punished on an individual level for those errors that are within the society. And this exactly leads to a point where those people are treated harder, and again, the equal treatment of any person is not given there. So therefore, crime is quite a complex issue. On the one hand, you've got the real crime, you've got the detected crime, and you've got the structural crime. And what we have to do is we have to focus on all these three dimensions to get what we want to have. The beauty of the polis, real justice, and equal treatment, and we think that this is a goal we are proud to propose.
I'd like to thank the member of the opposition. And now call upon, the member of government now call upon the member of the opposition.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, our team believes that this whole debate round is like debates of what was the first, chicken or an egg. Because actually, yes, really two problems exist. The objectively high level of crimes in the places of concentration of some minorities, and it's not only about ethnic minorities but also about poor people and so on and so forth. Some statistics really exist, and from the other hand, partly government can be true because these presumptions can create some additional motives. This discrimination can create some additional motives, but both problems really exist. And yes, sometimes there can be a circular reference between them, sometimes not. All the cases, all locations and particular cases, they really differ a lot. And talking about the average temperature for the hospital is about nothing. We think we should return to the basic principles that led the jurisdiction system to be efficient. It is objectivity and inevitability of punishment, no thanks, regardless whoever you are. And this is the prevention system. If the person committed crime will understand that he cannot hide under his social status, ethnics, religion, gender, whatever. We need to push another message to the society. We are concentrating all those ethnic equality issues. We need to push absolutely another message. We simply do not care about ethnics at all, because a good policeman should think about evidence, no thanks, about facts. And just imagine we have really two policemen. One is a really good man who is thinking only about evidence, and he simply does not care about ethnic characteristics. What proposition makes him do? They push them think about ethnic issues, but all those attention attention attracted to the topic. And we think that actually it will harm his work and it will make him think about it and so on and so forth. No thanks. The other point is that maybe we also have such a bad guy in police who actually discriminate some ethnic groups. And what we should do, like a police, for example, had in order to ensure that we can fight this problem. For the first, we will need to identify those who has such problems. And how can we identify them? Yes, by the one of the points is sure the statistical analysis. We will search for some unusual items when, for example, averagely in police there is 60% of arrest of minorities, 40 yes of majority, and one policeman no thanks has, for example, extraordinary high level. But we will not get this opportunity if this person will get concentration on measures how to hide his prejudice. He will intentionally arrest, for example, for lighter crimes, more peoples from majority or more white people, and after it we will have no actual basis how to identify no things and how to punish him. And we believe in the fact that after the precedents of identification of such policemen and their punishment are far more efficient than just talking to all the policemen that you should think over about the ethnical equality of your statistics of your arrests and so on and so forth. It really harms the efficiency of work of good policemen, and it really helps, no thanks, the bad policemen to hide some signs according to which we can identify their being prejudiced. Now I would like to return to the message. Let's see what struggle for equality was the most efficient in the history of humanity. Actually, from our point of view, it was a struggle for equality from women, for example. Yes, it is not absolutely efficient, but it is far more relatively efficient than for other groups. And what actual message had feminists? Do not open a door before me. Do not help me. Simply do not care about my gender. Assess me, yes please, only as a person.
But don't you think that, especially for women, some kind of affirmative action was very good? And what we're doing here is affirmative action on an executive level?
No, we think that when it comes to speaking about such things as punishment, they should be individualized. As we have seen the statues of the, for example, goddess Femita with closed eyes, police should simply do not even think the ethnic characteristic of the person committed the crime. It is the only way to real objectivity. This criteria should not be considered at all, but you, by your position, just create the tension. You make people think about no things, ethnical characteristics. You make people, because actually some people, after consideration of ethnical characteristics, can really come to the conclusion that yes, we believe that those people of some ethnical characteristics really commit more crimes, and it will lead to even far higher level of prejudice than it is now. We insist on the fact that it is a wrong approach. Yes, discrimination may exist in some cases, but actually the ways of struggling it are absolutely other. For example, as your test papers, when you apply somewhere, are checked without your name, yes, the same. We think that we just should put off the ethnical criteria out of the scope of the police attention. It is the only way to make police more objective. It is the only way to make society more objective and to think about facts, evidence, efficiency, and so on and so forth. We really beg this House to oppose. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the member of the opposition. And now call upon the government. Here.
Do you put something on my face?
We can do it afterwards, can't we? We can do it after it's all done.
But you stream now with face?
If you want.
No, I don't want to be with.
Okay.
Okay. Dear Mr. Speaker, colleagues on both sides, Moritz has explained to you the status quo quite drastically. He said that, for instance, in the US, but in also many other countries, 12.6% of the people, of the inhabitants, are black. But the US is also a country where 1% of the population is in prison, and in those prison population, 80 until 90% are black. That means from the 30 million black people we have in the UAE, 3 million are in prison. That means 1 in every 10 black person is in prison. But we don't believe on side proposition that's because blacks are more criminal because they are black. We believe that they are in prison because of self-confirming stereotypes, and we have to put a virtuous circle instead of a vicious circle on that to exactly change that. From side opposition, we just heard something like, yeah, keep it that way, but they never explained to us why this will actually change. They just said the harm will be everyone will experience racial profiling, and that's why there will be more tensions. And we will say, no, everyone will experience racial profiling, and then say, this is really bad, and then you have really much more empathy. Okay, but first I will sum up the debate in two things. I will firstly explain why especially the virtuous circle will stop the vicious circle. The virtuous circle of Moritz will stop the vicious circle that was brought by opening proposition, and why will we have more cohesion among the people, and why especially the innocent that belong to the same ethnicity are better off afterwards. But first of all, some rebuttal. You said policemen will either fix their statistics or make less, or will just look into lesser crimes. Let's just make a reality check. What's happening now? The police is having, as the police chief of Ferguson, the town where the young person was shot, said, we have a black day, so we bring in black people. So racial profiling is happening, and he's just arresting them to fix his statistics. So racial profiling is exactly less efficient and searching for harder crimes. And it means also that in a white majority urban area, also more blacks are arrested because they are more suspected, but the crime of possession of having drugs is equally divided among those things. So we will say exactly this will change now. So, and we will also have more whites arrested on harder crimes, on real crimes, because what we see, if a white person is arrested in America, the contraband and the punishment he is very much more likely that he has something done, because now the whites are like, I'm not white, I don't get caught by the police, that's why I can do something bad. But if we change that, they will be more efficient because crime is equally divided. So now we have to look in, will we stop the stereotypes and end the vicious circle? Opening proposition has quite well explained to us how this vicious circle works. So you have those stereotypes that the blacks are poor or majorities are criminals. That's why you check them more often, because you think, and then what happens afterwards? They are arrested, then they find more, they are sentenced more. This is come into statistics, this comes into the media, so it's kind of a self-confirmation bias. And Moritz has explained to you why this will change. Because you will also have, because when you arrest more of the majority, you will especially also find more majorities with crimes. And this is mostly drug possession. And Moritz has explained to you how this will happen. Because because the US, of course, like, I don't know the statistics, but it might be 60s or 50, 67% of white people, they will be arrested now too. and not all of them, but the match will be the same. So you have more white criminals. That will be in the statistics. That will be in the media. And now we have changing stereotypes, because now it's not only black people are criminal, but really a big amount of white people, and the majority are criminals. So that's why we changed the stereotypes. I take opening.
Rational discrimination, like I talked about, rationalize the discrimination to blacks more than arrest, and therefore increase their anger and crime and the discrimination toward them. Please deal with that.
I already said that at the beginning. So what you're basically saying, all of them experience racial profiling, but then they are not angry on the others, because the blacks are not angry on the Hispanics or on the whites. They are just angry on the racial profiling, because that's bad, and it's the reason is the stereotypes at the beginning, and we change the stereotypes on that. And by and the nice benefit is we arrest really much more criminals. And so now how this will also help. Morris has explained to you the drug laws, and the most criminals are arrested for drug laws, especially in the US, and they are put into prison. And the drugs laws are quite unfair. You get 100 times the sentence for crack, for possession of crack, than you get for cocaine, though it is the same ingredient and the same amount of ingredient. Why? Because cocaine is a white drug for rich people and crack is a poor drug. So, and now what do you have? Because the majority is affected too, they will care about that. And we see that at the moment in reality, because more white people are getting poor, they take crack, and now the laws change because you have political pressure, and you have also pressure on the judges and the police, because now their ethnicity, their friends in their circle is affected, and they will care about and put pressure on that. And how does it also change the real innocent people? Morris has said to you, you have that self-confirmation bias. These stereotypes does not only affect the potential criminals, but also for instance, Neil deGrasse Tyson, a well-known astrophysicist, who is also stopped very often, and maybe his children or other children are also very often stopped because they are black. That means they get the stereotypes. The majorities are often criminals, are often bad, and so you either behave to that stereotype, you get angered, or you are against that. For instance, you resist against the police, and that makes you a criminal instead of performing better at school. And also the teacher sees you as a potential criminal and maybe gives you bad grades. So that's why we have a virtuous circle, and that changes police, justice, and the laws, because now the majority is affected. We have less stereotypes, and so we have more potential for all the real innocent, more cohesion, and that's why beg you to propose.
I would like to thank the government, all the government speakers, and here comes the motion.
Hello to everyone, and I would like to start with a small rebuttal, and then I will go to main flashes. So as first, I would like to say that our government is actually trying to fix a statistic and to hide a problem. Because what are they saying? They are saying that, okay, now we have a discrimination in police. Now we have a stereotypes that force us to think about the ethnics. And what do we change? We just say, hey, you have to think about stereotypes only 2 times a day, and about black people, and 8 times a day about white people, just because they are more of white. What we believe, and what we as an opposition try to show you, is that this will bring even to more thinking about this ethnics, and this actually will change the focus from searching the reasons for the crime, from searching for guilt people, to thinking about statistics, to thinking about KPIs, about those performance, and evaluations that are done. Also, what our government is missing is that they're saying, okay, minorities, ethnic minorities are making more crimes. But as my colleague told, it is not ethnic minorities who are making crime. It is poor, it is those people who are poor. It is those people who are maybe gay and who are get discriminated. It is probably some other minorities. And if we just don't fix our system generally to remove this discrimination, then we say we just hide this problem and we concentrate on some part of people, and as we are still debating so much and so hard, we cannot see that it really effectively solves the problem of discrimination. So now about, yes please.
But shouldn't we reduce the stereotypes among policemen, teachers, judges, so that
Yes,
they get
thank
better
you.
chances with
Yes, thank you. So how can we reduce the stereotypes? We can reduce stereotypes by saying, hey people, those black people who live nearby, they are not those people who are making crimes. Even if they are black, it is possible that they have never did any crime. But what you are saying, you are saying that, for example, if you say that 30% of black people have to be arrested, you are saying that, okay, 30 people of those 100 black neighbors that you have, for sure they have made some crime. And you put it on an official statement and say, okay, if you have, you live with them, they did some crime. But which is even more, is that you say, if there were 10 people who live nearby, 10 black people who live nearby who did some crimes, then you say, okay, there has to be 20 white neighbors that live near you, 20 your friends, that for sure also did crime. And that is what we try to show you. No, thank you. So what are the main points and what was the main clashes? First one was what is the reason for the crimes and what was the reason for the hard life. And our government says that that discrimination, that the hard life of those people is a consequence of discrimination by police. But what we are saying, and I'd like to add some more examples, is that the reason for that is a lack of money. The reasons of that is that because in USA it is really hard to get to be a citizen, because and until you get it, you don't have a real full support from the government. Because in that time you don't have your friends and you don't have your family nearby. And that is what we have been talking about. That is why those crimes are happening, and not because just some people said, some people told, okay, no thank you, there are some black. Then the big question was, will actually the discrimination increase or decrease? And as the main argument from our government was that if we let people say that, if we let people think, let the policemen think that not only black people make some crimes, then the discrimination, general stereotype will change. But no, what we say is that we don't see the link between the policeman who is investigating the crime and the whole society as a general, who sees that that in official statement we say that 30% of all people living nearby who are black, they are making crime. And that is the problem. And even more, what we are saying that this will bring to a social conflict. Because in the same way as our government says about the black, there can be, as we told, there can be Italians, there can be some other people. And let's say, okay, there are living 100 of Italian people nearby. What you are saying is that one person of them should be arrested because, yeah, it is a statistic and because it is such a proportions. And we are saying this is wrong because this will bring even more conflict. Yes.
We prove that in the jurisdictional practice there is an unfair bias and a vicious circle towards minority groups, which discriminates them and hinders them from integration in society.
Yeah.
How do you respond?
Thank you. You have proved that there is a discrimination in society, but it is not, so the discrimination in police is only a consequence. So what you are trying to do, you are trying to hide the real problem of discrimination, hide it by, in statistics, which, as my colleague explained, can be fixed, can be green shifted, and can be changed just to hide this discrimination if I am really discriminating something. What we are saying is that in spite of doing this, you need to, and we need to concentrate really on two separate issues. One issue is to find guilty people if they are guilty. And a separate issue is to fight discrimination which may be available. And the last point, and also very important point, is that we are saying that this will bring to the lower efficiency of a police. Because now, if I am a person, if I am a policeman, I will stop, and if I see in front of me a black person and a white person, and for example, I have already arrested all the black persons that I had to arrest by my statistic, what I will do? I will just see, hey, okay, I need to arrest some white person, and I will try to find some reasons why to do so. So that we think that efficiency of police will go down, that discrimination will go up, and that this proposal won't give us any benefit. Thank you very much.
I would like to thank a member of the opposition, these are all the opposition speakers. Before you leave the room, if I could quickly go around, I'm going to mark out exactly who it is wants to be, POTSDAM, the recording, whatever it's going to be. So both the first